Welcome to the Darkling Radio, your home for spine-chilling stories, eerie mysteries, and horror that will keep you up at night. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and step into the shadows if you dare. Jason Miller never liked circuses, but when his best friend Emily Carter dared him to sneak into the abandoned carnival grounds, he couldn't refuse. The giant striped tent loomed in the distance, glowing faintly as though it were alive. They thought it would be nothing more than dust and empty seats. But the moment Jason stepped inside, the air shifted. The audience was already waiting, painted faces staring silently from the shadows, and in the center of the ring, a clown was smiling just for him. The circus came to town on a Friday night. I hadn't planned to go, but the sight of the enormous striped tent glowing in the distance gnawed at me until I couldn't resist. Something about it seemed off. The parking lot was nearly empty, a strange thing for a circus night. Only a few scattered cars sat under the flickering streetlights, their shadows stretching unnaturally long across the cracked asphalt. I almost turned around right then, but curiosity was louder than caution. I stepped out of my car and walked toward the tent, each step feeling heavier than the last. The closer I got, the more unsettling it became. The fabric of the tent wasn't the bright red and yellow I remembered from childhood circuses. Instead, it was faded, streaked with grime, the colors looking more like dried blood than cheerful paint. The air smelled of damp fabric, mold, and faintly of burned sugar, as though someone had spilled caramel long ago and left it to rot. I paused at the entrance, expecting to hear laughter or music. There was nothing, no children running, no carnival barkers calling out, no noise at all, only the low hum of the night air. I pushed through the heavy flap, and the world inside felt immediately different, like I'd stepped out of reality into something that wasn't supposed to exist. A dim light glowed from a single spotlight in the center, illuminating the dirt arena. The seats circled around, but they were all empty, rows upon rows of wooden benches coated in dust. The silence pressed against my ears until I felt dizzy. I thought maybe I had arrived too early, but there was no sign of anyone else. Then, the spotlight flickered once, twice, and he appeared. The clown. He stood in the middle of the ring, motionless, staring straight at me. His makeup was wrong, too sharp, too cracked, like it had been painted on a corpse and left to dry. His smile stretched across his face in a perfect curve, but it didn't match the hollowness in his eyes. They looked wet, glassy, as though they belonged to someone else entirely. He didn't speak, didn't move, he just stared. At first I tried to convince myself this was part of the act. Maybe the circus was doing something experimental, something strange to catch attention. But my body knew better. My skin prickled, every hair standing up. My throat went dry and my legs twitched with the instinct to run. I turned back toward the flap I had come through, desperate to leave this place before anything else happened. But when my eyes met the wall of the tent, the entrance was gone. The fabric stretched on endlessly, with no break, no exit, just solid stripes of red and white. Panic surged in my chest. I ran toward it anyway, clawing at the canvas, tugging, scraping my nails against it until they hurt. The tent wouldn't move. The fabric felt thick, like skin pulled tight over bone. My breath came in sharp bursts, and when I turned around again, the clown was no longer in the center. He was closer, crouched now, head tilted, his painted smile shining under the weak glow of the spotlight. I froze where I stood, unable to move or breathe. His body shifted in strange, jerky motions, like a puppet controlled by broken strings. Each step he took dragged across the dirt, slow but deliberate, as though he wasn't approaching me but circling, tightening a noose I couldn't see. I pressed myself back against the wall of the tent, wishing desperately for a door, a window, any escape, but there was nothing, just him. The air felt heavier with every passing second, as though the tent itself was shrinking, suffocating me, trapping me with him. My chest ached from holding my breath, yet I couldn't bring myself to release it. My heart hammered against my ribs so violently I thought it might burst. I tried to close my eyes, thinking maybe if I didn't look he would disappear, like a nightmare vanishing at dawn. But I couldn't. My eyes locked on his painted grin, and in that moment I realized the show had already started, and I was the only one there to watch. The spotlight above me flickered, buzzing like a dying insect, and in that blink of darkness the clown was gone. My chest seized up with panic. I scanned the arena, whipping my head from side to side, trying to find him. The silence pressed harder against my ears, thick and suffocating. I could hear the faint beat of my own heart echoing inside my skull. My mouth was so dry that when I swallowed it sounded deafening in the emptiness. Then, faintly, there came a sound, a creak. The wooden benches above me shifted, as though weight had pressed down on them. I froze. The seats had been empty. I was sure of it. I turned my gaze upward, slowly, afraid of what I might see. My stomach dropped. The benches were no longer empty. They were filled with faces, dozens of them, all painted white, all grinning with crimson mouths that stretched too wide, too sharp. The clowns sat shoulder to shoulder, motionless, staring down at me. Their eyes gleamed unnaturally, catching the dim light, all trained on me at once. The longer I looked, the more I realized their smiles weren't painted on, they were carved. Their lips cracked and split, pulled upward, their flesh raw at the edges. A sickly sweetness filled the air, like rot mixed with sugar. I wanted to scream, but the sound clung to the back of my throat and refused to come out. I lowered my gaze, shaking, desperate to find the exit again, but the striped walls stretched endlessly, enclosing me in this ring of filth and silence. The ground beneath me shifted when I took a step, soft and unstable, almost like mud. I crouched, pressing my hand against it. My fingers sank into the dirt. It was damp, cold. When I pulled my hand away, it wasn't just dirt that clung to my skin, it was something darker, sticky, and smelling of iron. I stumbled back, wiping my hand against my clothes, gagging as the stench clung to me. Above, the benches groaned again. The clowns didn't move, but their eyes seemed brighter, more alive. The silence broke with a sound I'll never forget, a high, breathless giggle. It came from somewhere above me, bouncing across the tent like an echo, though none of the clowns' mouths moved. My skin burned with fear, every nerve ending alive with warning. I backed into the center of the arena, spinning in place, trying to keep all of them in sight at once. And then the spotlight swayed. Its beam dragged across the dirt floor before jerking back into place, landing on the center of the ring. My blood froze. The first clown was back. He stood exactly where he had been before, but this time he wasn't empty. In his left hand, dangling loosely from thick white gloves, was a balloon. Its string twisted in the air as though caught in a breeze that wasn't there. At first I almost laughed with relief. It was just a balloon, harmless. But when the light hit it, my relief turned to horror. The balloon was glossy red, not with shine, but with something wet. It dripped slowly, leaving dark spots in the dirt below. The clown raised it higher, tilting his head as if to offer it to me. My chest tightened, and my knees nearly gave way. I didn't move. I couldn't. My eyes locked on the balloon, as it began to float forward. I thought he had tossed it, but his hand never left his side. The balloon moved on its own, bobbing toward me, pulling an invisible thread across the stale air. It brushed against my arm. The rubber was cold and sticky. I flinched, jerking back, but the balloon followed. It slid against my shoulder, squeaking with each touch, before drifting behind me. My whole body went rigid. I could feel it brushing the back of my neck, dragging lazily across my skin like a hand stroking me. I spun around, swiping the air, desperate to get it away from me. But there was nothing, no balloon, only emptiness. My breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. I turned back toward the center. The clown was gone again. The spotlight swayed, frantic and shaky, searching the arena like it was alive. The benches above creaked louder this time. I dared to glance upward again, and that was when I noticed something worse than before. The painted clowns in the audience were leaning forward now, their bodies tilting as one, their hollow eyes wider, their carved mouths gaping open. My pulse roared in my ears. I stumbled backward, choking on my own breath. Then I saw movement in the corner of the arena. The spotlight swung too quickly, throwing dizzying shadows across the dirt. I couldn't make out where the clown was, but I knew he was still here, hiding, waiting. And then the giggle came again. Only this time it was right behind me. The sound behind me froze my blood. It wasn't just a giggle this time, it was longer, broken, almost choking, like someone trying to laugh through water. My knees locked and my hands trembled at my sides. I didn't want to turn around, but the air pressed against the back of my neck as if something was there, breathing, waiting. Slowly, I forced myself to look over my shoulder. There was nothing, only shadows curling along the striped walls of the tent. The benches above creaked again, every wooden plank groaning beneath invisible weight. I lifted my eyes toward the seats, terrified of what I might see. The clowns were still there, row after row of painted faces, but they were no longer sitting still. They swayed gently, side to side, in perfect rhythm, as though some silent music played only for them. Their movements were hypnotic, endless, as if they were lulling me into the same rhythm. My body leaned forward before I realized what I was doing, and I had to dig my nails into my palms to pull myself back. I snapped my gaze to the arena floor. That was when I saw it, the balloon. It was back, floating in the center where the spotlight's beam had pooled. It hung lower than before, as if it had lost some of its weight, sagging with invisible exhaustion. The surface gleamed, thick and wet, droplets sliding down its sides and hitting the dirt with faint splats. I wanted to believe it was just paint, just some cruel trick of the circus, but the smell reached me before my thoughts could lie. The iron temps of blood filled my nose, sharp and unmistakable. The balloon drifted forward again, without string, without hand, as though drawn by some unseen current. My body screamed to run, but my feet stayed rooted in the soil, too heavy to lift. The balloon floated closer and closer until it hovered just in front of my face. The surface bulged, trembling like something was pressing against it from the inside. Then, with a sickening squeal, it brushed my cheek. The cold wetness clung to my skin like slime. I stumbled back, clutching at my face, and when I dared to look again, the balloon was gone. My stomach heaved, bile burning the back of my throat. I dragged in ragged breaths, my eyes darting everywhere, desperate to find it. My gaze snapped upward, searching the benches, but the balloon wasn't there. That was when I noticed something worse. The seats were empty. Every single clown was gone. The benches sagged as though their weight had vanished all at once, dust swirling in the empty space they left behind. My skin crawled as I spun in circles, searching for them. I knew they hadn't left. They were somewhere in the tent with me. The spotlight shuddered violently, throwing jagged beams across the arena. My eyes landed on the center, and there he was again, the clown. He stood motionless, head tilted, watching me. His painted smile looked cracked now, as if the skin beneath it was straining to tear through. His jaw twitched, shifting beneath the makeup, bulging in places like something alive was crawling inside. The sound of cracking bone filled the air as he tilted his head farther, until it hung at a grotesque angle. I staggered back, heart pounding, but the ground beneath me shifted, rippling like disturbed water. I looked down and saw the soil moving, swelling upward in unnatural shapes. I stumbled to the side just as the earth split open. My scream caught in my throat as a pale, lifeless hand clawed its way out of the dirt. The fingers were thin and rigid, nails broken, skin stretched tight like parchment. They twitched desperately, pulling against the soil. Then another hand burst free, scraping at the ground with frantic strength. My vision blurred as I tried to convince myself it wasn't real, that this couldn't be happening. But the dirt rose higher, and soon a head pushed through. It was gray, slick with soil, strands of hair matted to the scalp. The eyes were hollow sockets at first, but then they blinked open black, bottomless, unblinking. The mouth sagged open in silence, lips torn and pale. The figure dragged itself higher, shoulders breaking through the earth, rags of clothing clinging to its fragile frame. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I wanted to scream, but my voice had vanished. I could only watch in horror as the thing pulled itself free. My breath caught in my chest, because as the dirt fell away, I realized the shape of its face. It was my face. The thing that had pulled itself from the dirt stood unsteadily, its body hunched, its arms twitching as though it didn't belong to itself. The face was the worst part. My own face, hollowed out, smeared with soil and blood, a grotesque reflection that swayed before me. Its hair hung in wet clumps, matted against its forehead. The eyes were mine, yet they weren't. They were black, endless voids that swallowed everything around them. My throat closed as I stared at the impossible image of myself, alive but wrong, as though death had chewed me up and spat out the shell. The clown loomed behind it, tall and motionless, his hand resting on the creature's shoulder like a proud ringmaster presenting his main attraction. My skin crawled as I realized this was the performance, and I was both the audience and the act. The double tilted its head, mimicking my own panic-stricken movements. Every twitch of my hand, every quiver of my lip, it repeated, only slower, more exaggerated, like a mocking puppet show. I wanted to look away, but my gaze was locked, tethered by some invisible thread. Then it began to walk. Its feet dragged through the dirt with jerky, uneven steps, the sound of its movements wet and sickening. My lungs burned as I tried to force myself backward, stumbling toward the edge of the arena. The striped walls loomed around me, trapping me, boxing me in with the nightmare version of myself. Its mouth began to stretch open, wider than I knew a mouth could, the corners tearing until the skin split. What poured from it wasn't words, it was a laugh, low and wet, gurgling like something drowning in its own throat. The sound clawed into my ears, vibrating inside my skull until I thought I'd go mad. I dropped to the ground, scrambling backward, dirt filling my fingernails as I clawed at the earth to put space between us. But it was faster than me. My double fell forward, its body collapsing in a broken motion before jerking back upright, closing the distance. Its hollow eyes locked on mine as it hovered over me. I could smell it, now the stench of soil, rot, and something sweet beneath it, like rotting candy. My stomach lurched violently. Above us, the creaking of the benches grew louder. I risked a glance upward. The audience was back, every seat filled, row upon row of painted clowns. They didn't sit idly this time. They leaned forward, their chests heaving in unison, as though the very sight of my torment thrilled them. Their painted smiles cracked wider, splitting open until their mouths gaped impossibly large. Some had no teeth, just dark throats that pulsed with wet hunger. Others had too many teeth, jagged and mismatched, gnashing silently as they watched. I looked back just as my double dropped to its knees, pinning me in place with a strength that didn't make sense. Its fingers dug into my arms, icy and stiff, leaving marks that burned like frostbite. Its face hovered inches from mine, its gaping mouth dripping black saliva that hissed where it touched the dirt. The laugh grew louder, vibrating against my chest, as if it were coming from inside me rather than the thing above me. The clown behind it leaned closer, bending his long body at unnatural angles until his painted face was nearly beside mine. His grin was too close now, the cracks in the makeup revealing glimpses of raw, twitching flesh beneath. His eyes gleamed with a light that wasn't human, and though his mouth never moved, I felt him whisper into me, the words sinking like cold water into my bones. I couldn't hear them with my ears, but I understood them. A command, a transfer, a shift. My double froze, releasing me with a jerky snap of its arms. It stood up slowly, its movements smoother now, less broken, as though the whisper had filled it with new life. I sat paralyzed on the ground, gasping, trembling, my mind screaming at me to move. But I couldn't. My body refused. I could only watch as the thing that looked like me turned away, walking toward the benches. The clowns made room for it. My double climbed into the seats with perfect ease, settling among them, its black eyes gleaming like a starless sky. It sat there, smiling with my torn mouth, tilting its head just the way I did when I was nervous. The audience welcomed it, a slow wave of swaying bodies moving in perfect rhythm. I realized then that I hadn't escaped anything. I wasn't the one being replaced. I was the one left behind, and the show wasn't over. The arena trembled beneath me as though the ground itself was alive, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. My double sat high among the clowns now, its black eyes reflecting the weak glow of the spotlight. I couldn't tear my gaze away from it. It moved just like me, every tilt of the head, every twitch of my trembling hands mirrored in its body. Only it wasn't trembling, it was calm, certain, as if it had found its place here among the painted audience. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. I could hear the soil shifting beneath me again, the sound of unseen things crawling just below the surface. I pushed myself up on shaking legs, my body swaying with exhaustion and terror. Every step felt like I was dragging chains behind me. The walls of the tent stretched high, impossibly high, the stripes twisting upward into darkness. No entrance, no exit. I was trapped. The clown stood once more in the center of the arena, perfectly still. His painted smile seemed wider now, though I hadn't seen him move. His gloved hands hung loosely by his sides, twitching as if straining to contain something. His eyes glowed faintly, a pale yellow that pulsed like a lantern beneath fog. I wanted to scream at him, beg him to let me go, but my lips wouldn't part. My jaw felt locked shut, as though invisible wires held it still. Then the ground beneath me split open. The dirt cracked, long fissures racing outward like veins. Cold air rushed from below, reeking of rot and old decay. Before I could move, pale arms shot up from the cracks. Dozens of them. Thin, bony hands gripped my ankles, my calves, my wrists. Their touch burned like ice, and the more I struggled, the tighter they pulled. My feet sank into the soil as though the ground itself wanted to swallow me whole. I thrashed wildly, but it only pulled me deeper, inch by inch. Above, the audience leaned forward, their painted faces glowing in the dim light. Some clapped slowly, their hands slapping together with dull, wet thuds. Others gnashed their teeth in silence, mouths opening and closing like hungry animals. My double sat among them, smiling wider than I thought possible. Its head tilted further and it raised one hand, waving lazily down at me. My stomach lurched as I realized it wasn't mocking MIT was saying goodbye. The soil swallowed my knees. My lungs heaved with panic, dragging in air that felt heavy, damp, filled with mold and ash. I screamed, but the sound barely rose above a whisper. The clown tilted his head, stepping closer. His painted face cracked at the edges, flaking away to reveal raw skin beneath. The smile wasn't painted at all. The red split open, tearing wider, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth that glistened like shards of glass. The grin stretched impossibly far, reaching to the sides of his face, splitting his cheeks until they bled. I tried to look away, but his eyes held me. I couldn't blink. I couldn't breathe. The hands dragged me deeper, pulling me to my waist, my ribs, my chest. The soil pressed against me like a coffin lid, crushing me slowly. My vision blurred as the spotlight flickered overhead, casting the clown in flashes of movement. Closer, closer, closer. He was right in front of me now, his face inches from mine, his teeth clicking together with anticipation. His breath was rancid, thick and sour, coating my skin. The audience of clowns rose to their feet, their bodies swaying together in a single motion, their mouths opening in silent screams. My double sat among them, its grin never faltering, its black eyes glowing brighter until they were the only light left in the tent. The world around me dissolved into shadows and shapes, the striped walls twisting like a spiraling tunnel. The soil reached my neck, pressing against my throat. I gasped desperately, sucking in one last breath before the dirt closed over my mouth. Darkness swallowed me whole, but I didn't die. I opened my eyes, or thought I didn't. I was sitting in the benches now. My body felt heavy, stiff, but I was upright. The arena stretched out before me. In the center, beneath the swaying spotlight, stood someone new, someone confused. Someone looking around with the same fear I had felt. I lifted my hand. It moved slowly, stiffly, like a puppet's arm dragged by strings. My fingers curled in a wave. The spotlight flickered once more, and I felt the painted grin spread across my face. The circus hadn't ended. It had only begun again.